I always thought I knew everything about my life, about my marriage, about Claire. But that illusion shattered in the most mundane way, with an empty protein shake bottle on the kitchen counter. It was a Monday morning, and I had returned from a short client meeting downtown. The house was quiet, almost unnervingly so. I expected the hum of the dishwasher or the chatter of our two kids, but instead, I found silence. Then I saw it, a small container, the type used for single-serving protein shakes, discarded next to the sink. At first, I thought it was just a leftover from her workout routine. Claire had been obsessed with fitness lately, going to the gym every morning before work, but something about the placement caught my attention. I walked toward the kitchen table and noticed her phone lying unlocked next to her bag. It buzzed with a notification from a fitness app. Normally, I would have ignored it, but a strange impulse made me pick it up. And that's when I saw the messages, texts from someone named M. The messages weren't just about workouts or diet tips. They were intimate, playful, flirtatious, the kind of words spouses never write to each other. And it wasn't just the words, it was the timing. Every morning around 6:30 a.m., right when I thought she was at her regular gym class. I didn't confront her immediately. Not yet. Part of me wanted to believe it was innocent, maybe a coaching client who liked to motivate her. But a small knot of dread formed in my stomach. I decided to gather evidence first, to understand what was really happening. Over the next few days, I watched her routine carefully. Every morning she would leave the house, sometimes later than she claimed. Occasionally, she returned smelling faintly of a cologne I didn't recognize. My heart sank each time, but I refused to jump to conclusions without proof. I started small, a discreet camera in the living room, one in the hallway, nothing in private spaces. I wasn't trying to invade her privacy too blatantly yet, but I needed clarity. And then, the first piece of undeniable evidence came on Wednesday. I was leaving for work earlier than usual when I noticed her car wasn't in the driveway. I assumed she had gone to the gym. But as I passed the street near her usual route, I saw her car parked behind a closed yoga studio. And next to it, a man I didn't know. Tall, fit, wearing a branded Elite Performance shirt, the same gym she often mentioned. They weren't just talking. Their posture, the closeness, it was unmistakable. They were leaning into each other, laughing, too intimate for anything innocent. I froze, my chest tight, my vision narrowing. Part of me wanted to storm out and confront them. Another part, a part I hadn't expected, urged me to stay hidden, observe, collect, understand the full story before tearing everything apart. That night, I confronted Claire under the guise of casual curiosity. "Hey, who's M?" I asked, pretending to be unaware. She blinked, a small smile flickering across her face. "Oh, that's just Mark, my trainer, from the gym." I nodded slowly. "Trainer, huh? Must be a very hands-on training session?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Ethan, you're imagining things."
But I wasn't. That night, I installed another camera, this one in a position to capture any unusual interactions near the front door when she returned from training sessions. I also quietly began backing up her phone messages, just in case she'd tried to delete them. By Friday, I had enough to confirm my fears. Claire returned home later than usual. I watched from the living room as she entered the house and placed her gym bag down. She seemed distracted, nervous even. Then, a notification buzzed on her smartwatch. She glanced at it quickly, typed a response, and walked to the kitchen. I checked the footage from the hallway camera. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed. The message was brief, but unmistakable. "Can't wait for tonight, alone, like last week." My stomach turned. I confronted her the next morning. "Claire, who are you meeting at the gym?" I asked calmly, trying to keep my voice steady. She laughed nervously. "What are you talking about? I told you it's just training sessions." I placed her phone on the table, then explained these messages, the visits, the smell of another cologne on you last night. Her face went pale. "Ethan, it's not what you think." But it was exactly what I thought. I spent the next 2 days in silent observation. Every routine, every conversation, every smile she directed at me was layered with deception. I decided it was time to take the next step, to catch the full extent of her betrayal. I rented a small room at a nearby cafe with a clear view of the gym entrance. I brought my laptop, my camera feed, and my notebook. For 3 days, I watched. And then I saw it. Mark, the trainer, met her after hours. Not just casual conversation. They walked into a private training room. I didn't need to see more. The trust, the intimacy, the secretive closeness, it told me everything. I left before being noticed, my mind spinning. Rage, hurt, disbelief, all mixed together in a heavy, bitter cocktail. But underneath it all was clarity. I couldn't confront her yet. I needed a plan, a way to regain control of my life, my dignity, and ensure she felt the consequences of her choices. The next morning, I spoke with my attorney, a friend of mine, discreet, sharp, and understanding. I outlined the situation, the evidence, the messages, the observations. He nodded slowly. "Ethan, you have proof. Plenty of it. You can take legal action if you want. Restraining orders, separation, divorce. But you also have options. You don't have to react immediately. You can let this play out in a way that gives you control, not her." I left the office with a strange sense of calm. The first step in reclaiming my life was understanding that revenge didn't have to be cruel. It had to be smart. I returned home and waited. The next encounter between Claire and Mark was the perfect opportunity. I had coordinated with my attorney to have witnesses, discreet, legal, and ready to document. That night, I watched them through the hallway camera as they entered the apartment, not knowing that the camera feed was being recorded for legal purposes. They were reckless, laughing, whispering, completely unaware of the storm about to descend. And I realized in that moment that betrayal is never about what they do. It's about how you respond. I decided that I wouldn't just react with anger. I would dismantle the illusion they had built. I informed the gym management about Mark's unethical conduct, showed the evidence of his relationship with a client, and filed a formal complaint. The next week, Mark was suspended pending investigation. Claire panicked. She didn't know how much I had captured. Finally, I confronted her one last time, not with threats, not with anger, but with facts. "I know everything," I said. "Mark's suspended. Your lies are documented. You can choose to fix this, or you can live with the consequences." Her face crumbled. She pleaded. She begged. But I walked away. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing. The betrayal had been devastating, but I realized something crucial. Life doesn't end when someone betrays you. It begins again when you reclaim your power. I rebuilt trust with myself. I invested time in my children. I pursued my passions, something I had neglected while living in the shadow of her deceit. And slowly, I began to see a future that was mine alone, untainted by lies. Because the ultimate revenge isn't humiliation. It's living better, stronger, and happier than those who tried to break you. The next few days were a strange mix of anticipation and careful planning. Claire was restless, distracted. She could feel that something had shifted, though she didn't know exactly what. I made sure she never suspected how much I already knew. Every call she made, every message she sent, I documented. I focused on my own life, letting the children be my anchor. Emily and Liam, our 2 kids, had no idea of the storm brewing behind the walls of our home. I spent the evenings helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, and pretending everything was normal, even as I plotted the steps that would finally give me control over the situation. By midweek, the gym administration had confirmed my complaint against Mark. He was suspended immediately with a full investigation underway. I knew Claire's world was beginning to crumble. She had relied on secrecy and convenience, thinking no one would ever uncover her betrayal. When she returned home that evening, her demeanor was tense. She glanced at me nervously, trying to appear casual. I poured myself a glass of water and sat silently, letting the weight of my gaze settle on her. "You've been distant," she said cautiously, trying to fill the awkward silence. I nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about a lot of things." She swallowed hard, as though she could feel the truth hanging between us. That night, I left her a small note on her pillow. It simply read, "Decide what you want your life to be. The truth has a way of catching up with everyone." She didn't respond. She didn't have to. I knew the message was received loud and clear. The next morning she was unusually quiet, hurriedly getting ready for work, her face pale and anxious. I knew the final stage of my plan had to be executed soon. I arranged for Mark to be contacted by the gym's HR department, ensuring that he would face serious consequences for his actions. I also prepared a detailed timeline of every interaction, every message, every suspicious encounter, evidence that could not be denied. Then came the weekend. Claire suggested a casual brunch with friends, which I accepted with a calm demeanor. I had no intention of going. Instead, I monitored her movements through discreet means I had set up earlier, ensuring I had eyes on both her and her associates. By mid-afternoon, my suspicions were confirmed. Claire had arranged a private meeting with Mark at a quiet cafe downtown. They laughed, leaned close, and whispered. The intimacy was unmistakable. I captured everything discreetly, sending the footage to my attorney for safekeeping. Each frame was another piece of undeniable proof. That evening, I confronted Claire in a way she could not evade. I waited until the children were asleep, then calmly said, "Claire, I know everything. Every meeting, every message, every night you spent with him." Her reaction was a mixture of shock, fear, and desperation. "Ethan, please, I can explain. It wasn't serious, it was just... You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. And now you're going to face the consequences, but not with anger, not with humiliation. You're going to learn a lesson you won't forget." The next days were about precision. I involved my attorney to draft the divorce filings, making sure all assets were legally protected. I also shared the evidence with the gym, ensuring Mark would face professional consequences. Within a week, he was permanently banned from the gym, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. Claire was devastated. Her carefully constructed secret life was unraveling, and she realized that I had controlled the narrative all along. I didn't shout, I didn't threaten, I simply presented the truth. She tried to negotiate, tried to bargain, but the evidence spoke louder than her excuses. And then came the most important step: reclaiming my own life. I moved out temporarily, staying in a rented apartment nearby, allowing myself to process everything that had happened. I focused on my children, my career, and my own well-being. The betrayal had cut deep, but I refused to let it define me. I reconnected with old friends, took up new hobbies, and built a routine that gave me strength. I even returned to the gym, not to watch Claire, but to reclaim my space, my confidence, my normalcy. One evening, months later, Claire reached out. She tried to apologize, to make excuses, but I refused to engage. I had already moved on, emotionally, mentally, and practically. The lesson was clear. Trust is fragile, But integrity is powerful. And revenge, when executed wisely, isn't about destruction. It's about reclaiming your life and teaching lessons without stooping to pettiness. I had survived the storm. I had rebuilt my world. And most importantly, I had learned that the ultimate form of justice isn't in punishment. It's in rising above the betrayal and creating a life that cannot be tainted by anyone else's deceit.